Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 5 of season 7 of Dexter called Swim Deep. Now this is obviously a very busy episode. There's lots going on here, but let's just do what we always do and start really getting into what's going on with the characters and what's going on with the plot. Now, actually, I want to start by talking about something. They did bring up Travis Marshall in this episode. And I want to bring up something that another fan pointed out to me in a discussion that I want to point out something that another fan pointed out in a discussion that I happened to see about this last episode online. And that is when they were talking about Harrison, Dexter, was all, I can protect Harrison and all this other stuff. Now keep in mind, timeline-wise, this episode picked up literally seconds. I'm sorry, this season picked up seconds after the last season ended. So if you stop and think about it, that means it's been no more than a couple of weeks, most likely, since Travis Marshall tried to make a human sacrifice out of Harrison. Now, Dexter and his being a serial killer and keeping Harrison safe have of course been brought up by Deb, but the fact that a serial killer who Dexter was trying to help, just like he was trying to, he was trying to help Travis Marshall, he was trying to learn from Arthur Mitchell. But still, a serial killer that Dexter had the opportunity to kill and didn't take for his own stupid reasons, almost murdered his son. And, this is, first of all, I'm really kind of embarrassed that I didn't think to notice that myself, but again, this just shows Dexter is just living in a dream world. He really, really does not acknowledge his mistakes. He does not acknowledge the seriousness of what has been going on lately. I mean, he is just totally living in a dream world. It's really unbelievable. But anyway, let's get moving along. And as long as we're talking about Dexter, I suppose we might as well talk about him, since he is, of course, the lead character. And you know what? While watching this episode, especially the scene with Deb and Dexter talking at Dexter's apartment at the very end, part of me really just wanted, like, Hugh Laurie to wander into that scene and, in his house voice, say, "Dexter lies." Because, well, I mean, do I really need to point out all the times that Dexter lies during this episode? All the times that Dexter does stuff that he has deliberately said to Deb, "I'm not going to do," or he said, "I'm not lying about this." He said he's not going to steal any more cases from Miami Metro. Well, it certainly looks like he's possibly planning to do that with Hannah. And come on, we all know Dexter isn't going to keep his word on that one. I mean, seriously, think back about the last 6 seasons. How many cases where, if he'd just done his job and reported everything that he had found, would Miami of Metro have been able to grab these guys and toss them in jail? Now remember, Dexter is trying to justify this by saying that he catches the people who slip between the cracks. Now, in the case of Hannah, she is someone who would fit that criteria. In the case of Isaac Pulo, or Isaac, or whatever the hell his last name is, he doesn't. They end this episode, Dexter is able to use the system to put Isaac in jail. Now, granted, Isaac makes it quite clear that that doesn't mean that this is the end of it. And honestly, Dexter going there and saying, "So, I got you thrown in jail. Is this the end of you trying to kill me and my family?" Dexter, what in the name of God kind of moron are you? Seriously, you think a member of the a really crazy ass evil Ukrainian mobster like Isaac is just gonna go, "Ah, dang, Dex, you got me. I guess I'm just gonna sit here in jail nicely and quietly for the rest of my life." I mean, come on. I'm just dumbfounded by what's going on here with Dexter. And never mind the fact that Dexter goes and meets with Isaac in prison. Look, I don't really know a lot about how visiting things work in prison, but I know you have to do things like sign in, show ID, and all that. Now, sure, Dexter's has plenty of phony ID, we know that. But I'm pretty sure they also have things called surveillance cameras in prisons. In fact, I mean, I don't know the legalities of that, but I'm assuming there's at least a camera in the room where he's having that conversation with Isaac. And, well, I would not assume that the conversation is being recorded. That probably would be in violation of privacy laws. But still, is this really a conversation you want to have when you are almost certainly being recorded by a camera? But again, security cameras only exist in Dexter's version of Miami when it's convenient for the plot for them to exist. And speaking of cameras, okay, Dexter, you kill this photographer, and I mean, what? Did you not take his equipment? I mean, how exactly did those photos get there if you killed him immediately after he would have taken them? The only thing that I can think of is that the photographer, and they do explicitly say this happens in 2007, used a digital camera. Okay, I had a digital camera in 2007, so that's workable. And then for whatever reason, he emailed those to his home before Dexter got a hold of him. Okay, Dexter did say he grabbed the guy after the reception. I kind of understood that to say he grabbed the guy immediately after the reception. So unless this guy somehow, if Dexter did that, then the guy somehow emailed those photos home from the reception, or he went to his hotel home, went someplace, most likely his hotel, emailed them there, and Dexter grabbed him at the hotel. Okay, that's theoretically plausible, but it doesn't really jive 100% with the impression of the story that I got from Dexter in this episode. Okay, maybe I misheard a word or two of that, but I'm just telling you what I'm thinking here. I'm just saying this really, if you stop and think about it, doesn't quite hold up as best I can tell. Now again, there is a way this does work, but if you do take Dexter at the impression that I got that he killed the guy immediately after the reception, then no, that seems like some real BS right there. Let me see here. I do like that Dexter does bring up that he was able to outsmart Lundy, kind of. And that being the case, he shouldn't have too much trouble with LaGuerta poking around. And okay, I have to concede Dexter's point on that one. If LaGuerta hasn't figured out that Dexter's a serial killer at this point, and neither has anybody else in Miami Metro who isn't Dokes, that ain't happening. I mean, come on. The guys at Miami Metro, in a way, they really have almost as big a blind spot in regards to Dexter as Deb does. But of course, with Deb, it's because she loves Dexter. She doesn't really, at least until more recent times, really put all these pieces together. She's got, like I said, a blind spot. The guys at Miami Metro are just, half the time, don't really know their asses from their elbows. And speaking of which, let's turn our attention to the good folks at Miami Metro. Now, of course, our other main person in what's going on this episode is Deb. And here, Deb has kind of reached the point where she's really, as she even says, has started to really wrap her brain around the situation. She's kind of really starting to realize just what being Dexter's secret keeper means. Okay, she's had to compromise evidence. She's had to basically lie and help mess around with 3 different cases. She's had to lie to Batista, and you could tell that really was a knife in the gut for Deb. She really does admire Batista. He is a good cop. Batista really is about the best cop in Miami Metro. And she basically has to lie to him to treat him disrespectfully and really just basically tell him to go get screwed in a way. And I do like that this is not easy for her. This is the price that she has to pay to help Dexter. And as long as she's a part of this in any way, this is what she's going to have to do. There is no escaping that. It is either do this or basically Dexter's doomed. Now, granted, Dexter's been getting away from this for a really long time without Deb's help, but it looks like that might not be an option anymore, especially given the way how out of control Dexter is. How, as I've said, he keeps living in a dream world. If it wasn't for Deb's intervention here, Dexter would be going down. He, despite what he says, is not in control. He's sloppy. He's making mistakes. But let's since I brought him up, let's talk about Batista. Now, obviously, him basically Deb telling him to screw off and leave this case alone and drop it, that hurts. He has lost an enormous amount of respect for Deb, and you gotta wonder if in his brain he's wondering if there's maybe not something going on with Deb in this case that he doesn't know about. Like I said, Angel's, the guys at Miami Metro might not always be the most competent cops in the world. They most certainly aren't. But as I said, out of all of them, Angel's the one who does the best job. So you really can't help but wonder if he isn't just a little suspicious. And even more so, keep in mind, it wasn't that long ago that he was passed over for promotion in favor of Deb, who was the partner of the guy the world thinks is the Bay Harbor Butcher. Shouldn't that really have killed her promotion prospects permanently? I mean, can you imagine the papers? I mean, granted, this all happened with her, cussing about the Doomsday Killer, the media is fickle, blah, 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 blah. But seriously, partner of serial killer promoted. I mean, can you imagine the media would not have a field day with that? But things are only remembered in Dexter when it's convenient for them to be remembered. Such as Dexter beating an innocent man to death in the bathroom. Oh wait, that's never remembered. I told you guys I was never letting that go, didn't I? Yeah. Oh boy. So let me see here. So getting back to Angel though. So in addition to him losing respect for Deb, in addition to him probably still feeling a little slighted for having been passed over for promotion, you kind of have to wonder if this isn't adding fuel to the fire for Angel to maybe go and try something else with his life like he's been talking about. Now, as long as we're talking about the guys at Miami Metro, let's move and talk about how Quinn is stupid yet again. Okay, now there's not a lot going on with Quinn this time around. We continue to see that he really likes Nadia, and that their relationship does seem to be genuine. They do seem to genuinely like each other, despite Nadia being ordered to get close to Quinn by Isaac. But of course, as soon as Quinn finds the money in the car, what does he do? He does the stupid thing. He could have taken that money, walked back into that club, and thrown it in Jason Gedrick's face. He could have tossed it in the trash. There's a bunch of things he could have done that would have kept his butt out of the fire. But no, Quinn just takes the money. I don't think I even have words to describe how monumentally stupid this is. So I won't even try. Now, let's move on and talk about LaGuerta. Now, I've said earlier that out of everybody in this season, I can't help but wonder if LaGuerta is going to be the one who does not make it out of this season alive. I really do have the feeling that somebody at Miami Metro is going to die. I'm going to say that right now. And LaGuerta, to me, as I've said, seems like the most likely suspect because she's the one who seems to be getting closest to finding out Dexter's secret. And her conveniently dying would basically clear up that problem, wouldn't it? So I do like that we are seeing more of LaGuerta as a real cop. I have, as I freely said, I really do not. When this season started, I really did not like LaGuerta's character. I cannot find it in myself to really forgive just the way she's gotten herself promoted with blackmail, the way she basically told Deborah that she was going to, basically said to Deborah, I'm in charge and you're going to dance to my tune whether you like it or not. With that big smirk on her face out in the parking lot back in season 6. I'm sorry, that made me absolutely hate LaGuerta. Now we're back to seeing that very weird dynamic between LaGuerta and Deb, where LaGuerta oscillates between being Deb's enemy and being her mentor in a twisted sort of way. And this is, again, something we've seen before when LaGuerta made Deb take the fall for some stuff and then sort of came back around and showed, well, yeah, I did that for you. It was politics, and politics are always part of the job, but I did that for a good reason. Well, funny how good reasons, LaGuerta's good reasons always seem to be reasons that involve protecting her own ass or serving her own interests, but, well, anyway, I think I've made my point there. So let me see here. Just looking at my notes here. Yeah, let's talk about Isaac briefly. Isaac's story was cute and all, but it just seemed a little cliche. And I kind of would have liked to have known, okay, did your great uncle get away with stabbing that guy to death? I mean, did he just stick the guy and walk away and he just sort of bled to death there in the plaza? Or did they say, like, holy crap, he just stabbed that guy and throw him in jail? Yeah, I think the ending to that story does have some relevance given your situation. Like you being in jail for 3 counts of murder. But, yeah. Isaac and his desire for revenge. I do like that he is in a way. Well, what's the best way to put it? He is in a way like Dexter. He is focused on his goal. He will let nothing stop him. It is actually an apt description to compare him to the Terminator. Although, given Ray Stevenson's past acting career, I think I'd prefer to think of him more as the Punisher. But, that is, again, another parallel between him and Dexter. The only real difference that I'm seeing between them two in that regard is that, Isaac seems to be a lot less prone to making stupid mistakes. Dexter is not. Now, let's briefly talk about Hannah, played by the lovely Yvonne. I'm not even going to try and say her last name. Okay, well, you know her, of course. She really got everybody's attention from her role on Chuck. And I really liked her on that show. And here, of course, we're seeing her as a vastly different character. But it is really a credit to her acting ability that she could really go from being a very genuinely good guy, secret agent person to being a very cold, manipulative murderer. Now, I'm a little concerned about what's going to be going on here with Hannah. It just feels to me a little bit like we might be going down a familiar road. I mean, to put it bluntly, I'm a little worried she's going to basically be blonde Lila. Now, believe me, I loved Lila, but, Dexter's fascination with a woman similar to himself, and granted, we also saw that with Lumen, but not to the same degree. Well, we've seen that story. So, frankly, I don't really see the reason to go down that road again. I think it would be much more compact, I guess I would say, if Hannah was just treated as another potential victim for Dexter. But you don't bring in a woman like Yvonne, not going to try and say her name, for something like that. So we'll see. Although I do want to bring up, since a point that someone did raise in this regard is, okay, what if she's not really going to be a romantic interest? What if that's a bit of a false lead? What if she's a potential ally? Dexter's basically dancing with the mob here, And that could go very badly for him because it's really not just Dexter versus one guy. This is Dexter versus a guy who has a lot of really nasty people working for him. So if it could be sort of a super villain team up between Dexter and Hannah versus the mob, well, now that would be interesting now, wouldn't it? Geez, kind of. Never mind. I was going off on a completely unworkable tangent there, so I'm just going to pull things back and bring up one more thing about this episode that bothered me before we start wrapping things up. Why does Miami Metro have Lewis's DNA on file? I mean, I can understand them having his fingerprints. If you want to work for the police, I'm pretty sure your fingerprints have to be on file. I mean, as I've mentioned in my other videos, I'm a teacher. Just by the nature of my job, I have been fingerprinted. You know, my fingerprints are in the system. So, I can understand why they would have Lewis's fingerprints on file, but Dexter determines his identity through a DNA test. I'm not aware of any police department anywhere in America that requires the people that work for it to submit their DNA to the DNA database. I mean, unless Lewis was like busted with a hooker sometime previously, I seriously doubt his DNA is going to be on file, and if he was, then he probably would not have been allowed to work at Miami Metro. I'm sorry, that is a completely ridiculous part of the story there, and okay. Well, folks, that's all I really have for this episode. Despite some very, very weak and illogical moments of story in the plot, this is still a very tightly written episode. There's a lot, and I mean a lot, that goes on this episode. I'm really loving this. Every episode of this season so far has really packed in a lot of good stuff, and frankly, that's something the show has needed. It really needed to tighten itself up. But the writing, outside of the plot inconsistencies, has been very good. Nothing but good stuff to say about the acting, and there's just continues to be so much interesting stuff to look forward to. This is a somewhat different than usual season for us. It's not, simply Dexter versus the latest serial killer, but Isaac is definitely a worthy opponent for Dexter. Hannah is a serious wild card. We don't know what's going on with Deb, and Dexter is just simply kidding himself. He is not anywhere near the level of control that he believes himself to be. All of this just makes for some really interesting stuff. I cannot wait to see what happens this season. This is a real return to form for the show. So, yeah. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And until next time, take care and have a good one.